Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to set up a fairly simple dash ability in Unreal Engine 5, and I'm going to build a fairly simple Niagara effects to go along with the ability. Okay, I've got a new third-person template open, and the first thing I'm going to do is edit the character blueprint here, the third-person character. And I'm going to find a blank spot on the event graph. I'm going to get the E key, and I'll scroll down to find that keyboard event. All right, and so what I want to do here is create a dash ability when the user presses E. So what I'm going to do is grab the character movement component here, drag from that and say set max walk speed. And we'll set the max walk speed to something like 5,000. And I also want to set the max acceleration, so we can speed up quicker. To get to that target speed, we'll set that to something like 5,000 also. And then one more thing I have to do here is increase the braking friction, or else we'll slide when we try to stop dashing. And so we'll increase that to something like 2,000. That might be more than I need, but that's okay. Next thing I want to do here is get a set timer by event node. And I'm going to limit the dash ability to, say, 0.75 seconds. And so I'll drag back here from the event, make a custom event called stop dashing. And basically, I'm going to grab these same nodes here, so I'm going to just duplicate them, Control D. And I'm going to set the max walk speed here back to its default speed is 500. And the max acceleration, that starts out as 2,400. And braking friction starts out as 0. But I don't want to set the braking friction back right away. We'll still be moving at quite a fast clip here when this first executes. So we want to slow down first before we set it back to 0. So I'll disconnect that, and I'm going to use another set timer by event node. And we'll just wait something like 0.2 seconds. And then, oops, don't need to plug that in here. We need to make a new custom event. And I'll call this reset braking friction. And we'll plug that in there. All right, so that's pretty much the setup for the dash. We'll take a look at how it works so far. Okay, so we're speeding up, but it doesn't look very good because the animation doesn't speed up. So that's the next thing we'll look at here. So I'll go to characters, mannequins, animations, and I'll open this ABP_Manny. That's the master animation blueprint for both of the mannequins. And then make sure you're on the animation graph here. You can double click here, anim graph, and we want to click on the locomotion state machine. And I'm going to click on the walk run state. And now I can see my blend space player here that controls the walk run animation blending based on the ground speed. And so what I want to do here is I'll click on this blend space player, and I can find in the details here the play rate, and I want to drop down here and say expose as pin. Now I can adjust the play rate, and I'm going to do that based on the ground speed. I'm going to take the ground speed and say divide by, and we'll divide it by 500, and that'll get our normal play rate of 1 when our ground speed is the normal speed of 500. And but what we'll do now is clamp this value so that it doesn't increase. We're going to increase our ground speed to like 5,000. We don't want the play rate to go up by 10 times. So I'm just going to actually clamp this here, clamp float, and we'll set the max value here to maybe 3, let's say. And we'll keep the play rate at a minimum of 1, so it doesn't actually drop below 1 if we're going any slower than 500. All right, so that should work out pretty good here. Let's test it out. All right, so that looks pretty good now. The next thing I want to do is make Niagara effects for this dash ability. So I'm going to go back to my content root here, and I'll right-click, make a new Niagara system, and I'll just create an empty system. I'll call it dash FX. All right, and I'll make a new emitter here by pressing E and make an empty emitter. And I'll set the properties here. I'm going to set it to a GPU emitter. I'll select fixed bounds. And under emitter spawn here, I'm going to find spawn rate. And, oops, let's fix that. We'll set the emitter state to self. All right, and I'm going to set the spawn rate here to 25,000. And then under particle spawn here, I'm going to find the mesh reproduction, initialize mesh reproduction sprite. And I'm going to find my skm underscore quinn underscore simple. That's the skeletal mesh for the template mannequin. And I'll also click fix now here to fix this CPU access error. All right. And the next thing that I'm going to do here is add under particle update a scale color module. And I'll scale the alpha. I'm just going to drop down here and get float from curve. And I'm going to add a key here. I want to add a key fairly early in the curve and drop it down to something like maybe 0.15. I'll just type that in manually. All right. So I'm making a curve that looks like this. It's going to drop the alpha very quickly and then fade to 0 by the time the lifespan ends. And so speaking of lifespan, I'm going to set that here under initialize particle, lifetime. I only want it to be 0.2 seconds. I'm also going to set the emitter loop duration to 0.2 seconds. And I'm going to set the system update, the loop duration, to 0.2 seconds. Okay. Under initialize particle here, I'm also going to set the color mode to direct set. And I'll pick a bright green color here. And then under mesh reproduction sprite, I'm going to make these particles a bit bigger here. Under particle scale, let's say 10. Okay, and so I'm happy with that setup for now. I'm going to go ahead and add this Niagara effects to the character. So I'm going to go back to the character component, character blueprint here, and select the mesh component. And I'll add a Niagara particle system. And it's going to add the dash effects for me because that's what's already open. So it's already set here as the asset. And so I just want to turn off auto activate so it doesn't come on the entire time. We're going to set up an activation on our own here. And I'll do that in the E key press. So I'll just drag back here a little bit, make some room. Drag in this dash FX component. And I'll say set active. We'll just plug in the execution pins here, and I'll select to set it to active and reset, sure. And then when we stop dashing, we'll need to set that to not active. So I'll just grab these two nodes here, duplicate them down here, and we'll plug these in, but I'll set this to false. All right. And so let's give it a try here. Press play, and I'll press E. All right, so that looks pretty good. And that's the basic idea behind my dash effect. And that wraps up the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.